Good evening, friends. Tonight we open our report with a scene that captures the very essence of the strange, sometimes tragic, and often absurd reality of life across Russia. The darkness falls not only over cities, but also over people's hopes. And this darkness is not just a matter of light, it's about uncertainty. The lights went out once again near the Afipsky oil refinery. Residents sit quietly in their homes, the silence occasionally broken by the distant rumble of explosions and the nervous hum of a candle. Fear lingers in the air as no one knows where the next strike might fall. A sudden flash. A rocket flies across the night sky. The horizon glows briefly, and then, again, complete darkness. Private homes cut off from power. The cold creeps in. The irony is cruel. This is the land of energy superpower, yet even here, people are left powerless, literally and figuratively. Meanwhile, far from the front lines in the Sverdlovsk region, ordinary citizens have found the courage to record a desperate message addressed directly to the president. With trembling voices and weary faces, they ask to be relocated from collapsing, unsafe buildings into homes where they can live with dignity. Their appeal begins politely, as if they still believe that politeness will be heard.
We, the residents of emergency and pre-emergency houses, city of Serov, Sverdlovsk region, appeal to you with tears in our eyes. The words flow like a ritual, read from sheets of paper, their tone calm but hollow. They speak of homes so damaged that walls crack in front of them, ceilings sag dangerously, and mold spreads unchecked. They are not blaming foreign enemies, not this time. They simply describe a decay no one wants to acknowledge. The administration, they say, remains silent. The local companies responsible for maintenance have vanished from sight. The city turns its back. The only thing that moves quickly is the process of declaring buildings unsafe, because that's easier than fixing them. And while these people plead for roofs over their heads, a very different story plays out in Russian stores. Customers, wandering through dimly lit aisles, now encounter something new on the shelves. Small plastic containers labeled sausage trimmings, a polite term for what was once thrown away. They are sold not as waste, but as a product. One woman stares into the package, puzzled, asking, "We don't understand what this is. If we knew what this was..." The sales clerk only shrugs. It's a new kind of holiday cheer, perhaps, the kind where even leftovers become a luxury. The new year is near, and as every state channel will remind you, it's a time for optimism. Yet behind that optimism lies quiet disbelief. Let's move east to Vladivostok. On bus route number 55, passengers sit patiently, watching as the driver stands still at the front. Minutes pass, then 20, then 30. He says he will not start the engine until he prays. "I won't drive until I've finished my prayer," he repeats calmly. People sigh, check their watches, but no one dares argue too loudly. Faith has become a reason to wait, just another delay in a country built on waiting. One passenger calls the dispatch service, her voice nervous and tired. The operator listens and replies, "Just wait a little longer. He'll pray and then drive." The logic seems unshakable. Patience has become a national ritual. As long as people are told to wait, they believe that waiting is the only proper thing to do. But somewhere, far from these scenes of silence and endurance, another kind of tension builds. Across the ocean, in Washington, a US senator faces questions he'd rather avoid. Marco Rubio struggles to answer directly when asked whether Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. His words twist carefully through diplomacy. "Russia invaded Ukraine, yes, but our intent is to end the war." The journalist presses him. Is he a war criminal? The senator dodges again. The hesitation is telling, because acknowledging it would mean confronting a truth that demands action. Behind this hesitation lies fear, politics, and perhaps a kind of exhaustion shared by many nations watching the war drag on. Every phrase measured, every answer incomplete. Meanwhile, Moscow's diplomats speak more plainly. One Russian ambassador, standing before cameras in London, declares, "We do not need a deal. We need Ukraine's full surrender." It's not negotiation, it's demand. And this statement reveals more than any press release could. When strength fades, the language hardens. When victory slips away, words become weapons. Yet while diplomats trade rhetoric and politicians measure sentences, ordinary life continues to crumble in quieter corners of the country. In the Saratov region, hundreds of cars remain trapped on snow-covered highways. For 12 hours, people sit inside their vehicles. No food, no heat, no emergency crews in sight. The storm roars outside, and phone batteries die one by one. Some drivers light candles inside their cars, others simply wait. There is no official rescue, only the collective patience that has become a kind of survival instinct. Someone jokes bitterly, "All the men are busy in Ukraine," and perhaps that's why there's no one left to dig them out. The night feels endless, but this is only the beginning. What connects all these stories, the darkness, the silence, the patience and the fear, is something larger, something deeper. It's the quiet endurance of a nation that has learned to survive everything by pretending nothing is wrong. Stay with us, the story continues after this pause. Make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next will reveal much more than anyone dares to say aloud. Part 2. When the morning finally comes, the snow still hasn't melted on the Saratov highway. The stranded cars have turned into long frozen chains, their roofs buried under white layers of ice. Some people step outside, stamping their feet, trying to keep warm, while others stay inside, breathing onto their palms to stop their fingers from going numb. A woman named Elena, a teacher from Balakova, whispers into her phone's dying battery that she's been waiting for help for more than 12 hours. "We haven't seen anyone," she says. "No rescuers, no police, no military. Only snow. Snow everywhere." Her words vanish into the static. Somewhere far away, a dispatcher notes the complaint and moves on to the next one. The country's vastness swallows voices easily. It always has. When morning light finally reaches the scene, the scale of the standstill becomes visible. Hundreds of trucks, private cars and buses, all trapped in one endless frozen corridor. It is not a disaster by official standards, because no one has died. It is simply life as usual. Meanwhile, the situation in Crimea remains tense. Residents report flickering lights, empty store shelves, and constant air raid alerts. Power stations work on emergency schedules, switching entire districts off at night. In one coastal town, families gather around small generators, listening to distant explosions and wondering whether they'll still have internet by morning. The war has turned their lives into a strange combination of routine and fear. They are not soldiers, yet every sound, every flash in the sky feels personal. Some record videos in the dark, posting them online, whispering over the noise of drones. "We live like shadows," one man says quietly, his face lit only by a phone screen. His tone carries no anger, just exhaustion. For many, the war has become background noise, as familiar as the ticking of a clock. In Moscow, however, the city glitters with festive lights. The contrast could not be greater. The Kremlin's red walls shine brighter than ever, the boulevards sparkle with garlands, and television hosts speak of a year of triumphs and spiritual renewal. On Red Square, a giant Christmas tree towers above the skating rink, its decorations paid for by state corporations that promise unity and strength. People take selfies, children laugh, and a brass band plays cheerful music. No one mentions the blackouts, the shortages, or the soldiers who will not return. The spectacle is perfect, designed to make viewers forget the cold reality just beyond the camera frame. Propaganda thrives on beauty, it always has. And while the official channels praise the nation's unbreakable will, millions quietly struggle to pay for heating, electricity, or food. In the city of Serov, where residents beg to be relocated, the story takes a darker turn. After their appeal to the president went viral, local officials visited the crumbling buildings, not to offer help, but to check who exactly had dared to record the video. Tenants later said that their housing inspectors threatened them, warning that publicly exaggerating the situation could bring legal consequences. One elderly woman, Galina, who has lived in the same wooden house for 50 years, showed reporters how her walls bend inward when the wind blows. "They told me it's not dangerous," she said. "I don't know what has to happen for them to say it is." Nearby, a young mother holds her baby wrapped in blankets because the heating stopped 2 days ago. "We're supposed to be patient," she says quietly, "but patience doesn't make it warmer." The same line repeats itself across countless towns: patience as survival, silence as protection. While the domestic problems deepen, political discussions abroad intensify. Western analysts talk endlessly about the possibility of negotiations, ceasefires, or frozen conflicts. Yet on the ground, no one freezes except the people waiting for help. When Russian officials demand Ukraine's surrender as a precondition for peace, they echo the same logic that built the current system: peace without accountability, order without justice. In London, the Russian ambassador's declaration, "We need total capitulation, not compromise," spreads through headlines, shocking diplomats but not surprising anyone who has listened closely over the years. It's the voice of a regime that confuses defeat with delay, one that seeks breathing room, not reconciliation. Across the Atlantic, Senator Rubio's hesitation resonates in political circles. His reluctance to name Putin a war criminal is not just personal caution. It's the reflection of a world afraid of irreversible words. To label someone as such would demand a consequence, and the global stage trembles before consequences. Instead, the discourse becomes about strategy, not morality, about timing, not truth. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to bury its civilians, one shell at a time. In Kiev, air defense systems roar through the night as sirens wail over the rooftops. Parents cover their children's ears, waiting for the all clear message that sometimes never comes. And while leaders abroad debate terms, people in basements continue to live by the rhythm of alarms. Back in Russia, there are other alarms, quieter, less visible, but just as real. Inflation creeps upward. Small towns lose access to basic goods. Factories reduce work hours, while officials insist that the economy is growing steadily. Independent journalists who try to report otherwise face new restrictions. Some leave the country, others stay, hoping to outlast the storm. But information, like electricity, flickers unpredictably now. The state's control of narrative is nearly complete. Yet cracks still appear, in whispers, in private conversations, in the hesitant laughter of those who no longer believe the slogans they repeat. There is no open protest, only a silent consensus of disbelief. In Tomsk, a strange protest took place last weekend. 50 young people gathered to demand the unblocking of the online platform Roblox. It might sound trivial, but for them, it was about something bigger. Their right to connect, to play, to live a normal digital life. "Hands off Roblox!" they shouted, holding homemade signs. Police watched from a distance, unsure whether to intervene. The protest ended quietly, without arrests, but the message spread online faster than expected. Even small acts of defiance now carry symbolic weight. When the channels of free speech are sealed, even the smallest cry for freedom sounds like thunder. And still, amidst all this, the rhythm of daily endurance continues. Somewhere in Vladivostok, that same bus driver finishes his prayer, returns to his seat, and finally starts the engine. Passengers sigh in relief as the vehicle moves through icy streets. They don't argue, they don't complain. They simply move forward, because in Russia, movement itself feels like victory. It's the same logic that governs everything. Keep going, keep waiting, keep enduring. The darkness is familiar, but so is the stubborn will to survive inside it. The deeper truth is this: the system survives not through strength, but through people's habit of adjusting. Each new absurdity becomes part of the ordinary landscape. Power cuts become anecdotes. Broken homes become metaphors. Political statements become background noise. And through it all, the same refrain repeats: we just need to wait. But waiting has consequences. It numbs, it silences, it replaces outrage with fatigue. As we move closer to the heart of this story, we begin to see that what's happening is not simply a collection of random events, it's a reflection of a nation's condition. From the frozen highways of Saratov to the glowing streets of Moscow, from the frightened towns of Crimea to the exhausted villages of the Urals, every scene tells a fragment of the same truth. A society trapped between pride and despair, between faith and fear, between illusion and reality. Stay with us, because the final part will reveal what lies beneath these moments, the connections that explain why everything, from prayers on a bus to trimmings in a grocery store, forms part of one unbroken chain. Subscribe and keep watching, because the most revealing details are still ahead. Part 3. As the story unfolds, the threads begin to connect, weaving a single, vast picture of life in a state stretched between illusion and endurance. What might appear as isolated episodes, the darkened towns, the pleading families, the waiting passengers, the frozen roads, are in truth reflections of the same system that has perfected the art of postponement. In every corner of Russia, from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, from the southern plains of Krasnodar to the wind-swept streets of Murmansk, people wake each morning to the same question. How long can one live by waiting? It is a question that no official will ever answer aloud, because silence itself has become a policy, and patience the most celebrated virtue of all. In the Sverdlovsk region, the residents who appeal to the president are still waiting for any sign of change. The houses remain the same: cracked walls, leaking roofs, windows covered with frost from the inside. Local television briefly reported that the issue is under review, and then moved on to a story about patriotic school programs. In one of those schools, children rehearse for a holiday concert, singing songs about courage and homeland, their voices echoing through cold corridors where heaters no longer work properly. The teachers tell them to wear coats indoors, but also to smile for the performance. It is not hypocrisy, it is adaptation. Everyone learns early that pretending things are fine is safer than admitting they're not. That lesson becomes a way of life. In the capital, the government continues to present an image of stability. Press conferences feature smiling ministers discussing agricultural successes, rising birth rates, and new infrastructure projects. Charts appear on screens, numbers rise upward, applause follows. Yet behind those walls of optimism, data tells a different story. Regional hospitals closing, municipal budgets shrinking, and small businesses disappearing under the weight of sanctions and bureaucracy. The contrast is stark but familiar, like a split-screen image of two countries sharing the same name. On one side, a nation of televised prosperity. On the other, a land of quiet despair, where people barter, improvise, and endure. The war in Ukraine, though geographically distant for many Russians, casts a shadow that reaches every household. The mobilization left entire communities without fathers, brothers, and sons. In small towns, women gather at post offices to check whether their relatives have written. Telegram channels fill with whispered updates, photographs from unknown front lines, and names on lists that no one wants to read. Officials insist that everything is under control, that morale is high and support overwhelming. But in private, even loyal citizens confess fatigue. They no longer ask when the war will end, only whether it will ever end at all. Meanwhile, on the international stage, new negotiations begin to take shape. In Ankara, diplomats from several countries meet behind closed doors, discussing potential frameworks for a ceasefire. Each side issues vague statements afterward, speaking of constructive dialogue and mutual understanding. Yet between those phrases lies an unspoken truth. There is no trust left. The world listens to Moscow's demands and Kiev's conditions, but the distance between them only widens. Western leaders debate sanctions, energy prices, and diplomatic gestures, while inside Russia, state media continues to repeat the same message: that the country is surrounded, misunderstood, and destined for greatness through suffering. The repetition works. For many viewers, fatigue turns into acceptance.
reality becomes what they are told it is. In regions like Saratov and Omsk, fuel shortages quietly return. At night, truck drivers sleep in cabs while lines stretch at gas stations. Officials claim there is temporary supply disruption, a phrase that has become as common as technical maintenance. In the morning, when the radio announces yet another speech about resilience, people shake their heads and turn the volume down. The belief in grand narratives fades slowly, not through rebellion, but through quiet indifference. A nation does not collapse when it shouts. It collapses when it stops believing that shouting matters. On the cultural front, something strange happens. Independent artists, musicians and filmmakers who once tried to escape censorship now find new ways to speak. They replace slogans with metaphors, direct criticism with irony.
Songs about winter become songs about loss. Plays about history become mirrors of the present. The language of art turns subtle, coded, but persistent. Even in silence, defiance finds form. A young director in St. Petersburg stages a performance about waiting for spring. The audience understands without explanation that spring, in this context, means change. When the play ends, they applaud for a long time, not because it's safe to do so, but because it's the only way left to feel part of something honest. In the midst of these realities, the internet remains both a refuge and a battlefield. Authorities tighten control, blocking websites and foreign platforms, while millions of users learn to bypass restrictions through VPNs. Information flows like underground water, quiet, unstoppable. The protest in Tomsk over Roblox may have seemed trivial, but it signaled something deeper. A generation no longer afraid to speak, even about small things. For them, the digital world is not an escape. It's the only space where truth still breathes. They share videos, organize fundraisers, spread stories that state television will never mention. And though each action seems small, together they create a current that even censorship struggles to contain. Back in the towns along the Volga River, winter tightens its grip. In Saratov, rescue crews finally clear parts of the snow-blocked highway. Drivers emerge, pale and exhausted, but thankful to be alive. Reporters arrive hours later, asking what they felt during the ordeal. Most answer simply, "We waited." The phrase has become universal, waiting for light, waiting for warmth, waiting for answers. A society that once prided itself on endurance now finds itself defined by it. In Crimea, where the lights flicker once more, the night sky burns faintly on the horizon. Locals no longer run to shelters every time they hear an explosion. Instead, they pause, listen, and continue their conversations. Adaptation has become instinct. "We can live through anything," one elderly man tells a neighbor, "as long as we keep calm." It is both a statement of courage and a confession of surrender. As we step back from these scattered images, the freezing roads, the crumbling houses, the prayerful bus driver, the censored artists, the weary politicians, a single theme emerges. It is not chaos, but continuity. The system holds together not through progress, but through repetition. Each crisis is followed by another call for patience. Each mistake becomes another reason to endure. The pattern never breaks because endurance has replaced change as the central idea of survival. Yet beneath the surface, something moves quietly. In private kitchens, in online chats, in whispered jokes, people begin to see through the script. They may not protest, but they no longer believe. This belief is the first fracture in any wall. The laughter becomes sharper, the irony deeper. It is not open rebellion, but it is the beginning of awareness. Awareness that patience, once seen as strength, can also be submission. Awareness that waiting forever means never living at all. This is the final truth at the heart of the story. The darkness is not endless, but it will not lift on its own. The people who sit in buses waiting for prayer to end, who buy scraps of sausage,
who write appeals from collapsing homes. They are not weak. They are the proof that life persists, even under weight. But endurance alone cannot change the future. Sooner or later, the choice will come, whether to keep waiting or to start demanding light instead of candles. And as this choice draws nearer, one question remains for every viewer, every listener, every witness to these scenes.